Welcome back to the Simulator series. In today's episode, we're going to be adding exclusive pets as developer products. Now, as usual, if you guys do enjoy the video, make sure you smash the like button. Also, if you want to support me and gain access to all scripts and the game file that we made during this episode, there's a link down below the description to the Patreon, and you guys are going to check that out. With that being said, let's hop right into it. Hopping directly into Roblox Studio, let's get started by creating the GUI. Now, we actually created the GUI in the last episode. This time, we're just going to add a little bit to it, so it's not even going to take that long. To do this, we're going to go inside of the Start GUI. We're going to open up our Shop GUI inside of the frame, and then we'll start adding stuff in here. But before we do that, let's go ahead and make sure we set the enabled property to true on the Shop GUI, and now we can actually see it. Next, what we're going to do is clone the clicks frame, and then we'll rename this to be called Pets. After we do that, let's go ahead and update the background color of this. And for the color, I'm going to kind of match it with the bun, so we're going to take that color right there. Next, we'll go ahead and update the text of the title text label. For the text of this, we're going to say exclusive pets and then tradable in parentheses. And then we'll set the text of the subtitle to say goes off sale forever in 00:00:00. Now that we've updated both of those, let's go look at the container. For the background transparency, we're going to actually decrease this a little bit and actually set this to 0.9. We'll also update the background color, and we're going to set this to a dark black. And now that we've done that, the container doesn't actually look black. It actually looks like a darkish blue color, and that's because of the transparency over top of the blue background. Then what we'll do is we'll go inside of the container, and inside of here, we're going to make this template visible. Now, we're not going to use this template. We're actually going to make a different one, but we might use some of the components that we used inside of here. So what I'm going to do is throw a brand new frame inside of the container, and we're going to rename this to template. Now, before we begin really working on the template, let's go ahead and set up the UI grid layout. For the cell size, we're going to go with 0.275 on the X and 0.75 on the Y. Now, inside of our container, I want to be able to show off about a maximum of 3 total pets inside of here. If you want to show more than 3 pets, you always could turn this container into a scrolling frame. And with that method, you could always display an infinite amount of pets inside of here. Now, for the spacing, I want to increase this a tiny bit. So for the cell padding on the X scale, we're going to set that to 0.05. And now there's a little bit more spacing between them. And that's pretty much all that we have to adjust. We don't really have to touch any of the other properties of this. So now we can go back to customizing the template. Inside of our template, I'm going to go ahead and throw in a UI list layout. Then what I'm going to do is throw in another frame inside of here. And we're going to rename this to be called Pet. Now, for the size of this, on the X scale, we're going to set that to 1. And on the Y, we're going to set that to 0.6. Next, what we're going to do is actually set the background transparency of the template to 1 so that we no longer see that. This makes it a lot easier for us to see this white background of our pet frame that we just created. And now that we've done that, we can actually drag this template text button inside of our template frame. Now, we're actually going to rename this button to be called Buy. And then let's go ahead and readjust its sizing. On the X, we're going to set that to 1. And on the Y scale, we're going to set that to 0.15. Let's then go ahead and update the background color of this. And we're going to go with a nice green color, so something like that. Then we can go inside of this button, and we're going to delete everything except for the price and the UI corner. Let's then go ahead and readjust the sizing of the price text label. On the X scale, we're going to set that to 0.9, and we'll also do the same on the Y scale. We're then, of course, going to want to center this, so let's go ahead and set everything here to 0.5. There we go. For the text, we need to make some changes here. So for the text color, we're going to make this white. And for the text X alignment, we want to make that center. Now, with the UI corner here, we're definitely going to want to increase this a bit, and we're going to go with about 0.35. That makes it nice and round, and then what we can do is throw in a UI stroke inside of here. Now, we want to set the apply stroke mode to border, so this appears around the outside of the bun rather than the text inside of the text bun. And for the thickness of this, we're going to go with a 3. Now that we've done that, we've pretty much got the buy button created and all looking good. We can go back to the UI list layout and add some padding here. For the scaled padding, we're going to set that to 0.1. And now there's a nice amount of space between our buy button and our pet frame. Let's then also make sure that we set the horizontal alignment to center as well as the vertical alignment. And that's all that we're going to have to do with the UI list layout. So now we can start working on the pet frame. Inside of the pet frame, we are going to add a viewport frame to this. We'll then go ahead and resize it. Both the X and the Y scale, I'm going to go with about 0.75. And then, of course, we want to center this. So let's go ahead and do that as well. There we go. Let's also make sure that we set the background transparency of this to 1 as well. Next, what we're going to do is grab the price text label outside of our buy button and paste that directly inside of the pet frame. You can rename this text label to be called Clicks. For the text of this, we're going to say something like 999M. For the text color, we're going to want to update this to a nice yellow. And then we're going to want to resize this a little bit as well. So on the X scale, I'm going to go with 0.85. Whereas on the Y scale, we're going to go with 0.2. Currently, this is centered horizontally and vertically. Instead, we want this text label to appear more towards the top. So for the anchor point on the Y-axis, I'm going to set that to 1. And for the position on the Y scale, we're going to set that to 0.05. Now that's looking good, appearing towards the top. We'll then duplicate this text label, and now we can rename this to be called Rarity. For the text of this, we're going to say something like Epic. And then we'll set the text color to a purple, just like that. We don't have to resize this anymore. We just want this to appear towards the bottom of the frame. So for the position here, we're going to set the Y scale to 0.75. Okay, cool. Now we're actually almost done with creating this entire frame. We are done with both these text labels. We are done with the viewport frame, but now we have to add a couple more things to this frame. They are relatively simple, and they're mostly just extra details, so let's start working on them. The first thing that we're going to do is throw in a UI corner inside of here. Now for the corner radius, we're going to go with 0.125. That makes the corners nice and round. We'll then actually duplicate the UI stroke from the by button and put that inside of this frame. For the thickness here, instead of going with 3, we're going to go with 6. And now another thing that we're going to actually add inside of here is a UI gradient. Now, with the UI gradient, what we're going to do is adjust the color property. And actually adjust this, we want to click on the property, and then we want to click these 3 dots right here. Now, on the left and the right, we can kind of see these 2 arrows on the bottom. What we're going to do is click the left arrow. And now what we're going to do is click color, and then we'll start off with the red color on the left right here. Then what we're going to do is move a little bit further down the line, and then just click. Now, once we click, we see another arrow is added here, and then we can click on color, and then we'll move this slider a little bit further to the right. Now, as we look at how this color is being made, or even if we look at the frame right here, we can also see how the color is being displayed there as well. We can keep doing this a couple of more times. So let's go further over, click to the right, and then just drag this over. And then we'll do this a couple of more times until we sort of reach the end for both the colors and this line as well. So I'm almost at the end of the line right here, and I might actually just make this a lot more vibrant. So I'll readjust all the colors and just make them a lot brighter. For the last one, I'm going to make this a bright red as well. You guys should already know this. I'm not great when it comes to art. I'm just showing you how I would accomplish this. If you want to make your rainbow look much more beautiful than mine, then hey, you definitely can. But this is how I would achieve if I was going for a rainbow. I'm not saying this is the perfect looking one, but this is how you can do it. Now, if you want to mess around with these sliders, you can drag them down to kind of affect how the colors blend with each other. But I'm going to leave mine like this. I think that looks pretty decent. So I'm going to go ahead and click on close. Next, what we're going to do is actually modify the rotation property here. And we're going to set this to 50. And now that we've done that, rather than the rainbow looking like it's going up and down, this kind of makes it look like it's going towards the top right corner. And now that we've done that, we can collapse the pet frame. We can also collapse the template. And then we can click on the template and duplicate it about 2 times and see how it looks. And we can easily see that we're able to fit 3 templates inside of here, so that's all looking good. Now what I'm going to do is delete 2 templates, just leaving 1. And then I'm just going to leave the GUI like this, and we can actually begin scripting. So to begin scripting this GUI, the first thing that we want to do is add a couple of new pets to our game. Now for demonstration purposes, the easiest way to actually achieve this is by going inside of replicated storage, inside of the pets folder, and then simply we could duplicate any of our existing pets and then just give them another name. So we could rename this duplicate pet to be called something like Big Cat instead of just being called Cat. Now the pet model would look exactly the same as the normal cat pet, but this would allow us to create and add a new pet to our game that would be called Big Cat, and that would be the simplest way to just demonstrate the whole scripting side of things. But instead of doing that, what I'm going to actually do is add in a couple of pet models from our 5,000 subscriber pet pack special that we uploaded. You can access this for free. There will be a link down below in the description. Just go ahead and download the pets.rbxm file, and then you can import that directly into Roblox Studio. Now, out of all of these pets, I'm just going to go ahead and add in a wolf and spider pet. So we'll delete all the other ones and paste those 2 directly inside of our pets folder inside of the replicated storage. And now that we have those pets inside of that folder, we can go ahead and collapse that folder. And now we can begin scripting by adding those 2 brand new pets to the pets config. So we're going to go inside of the configs folder and open up the pets module script. Inside of here, we're going to want to go to the config variable right here. And we can go ahead and add our brand new exclusive pets to here. So I'm going to first add the spider. We're going to say the amount of clicks that this gives off is just 9999999. We'll also set the max level of this to 10. And of course, if you want to, you can add any further properties that you want to. Then what we'll do is add the wolf pet. And for the clicks of this, we're going to add one more 9 to this. So it's 9.99999 million. And now that we've added those 2 pets to this config table, we're good with those. The next thing I want to do is create a brand new function. So we're going to go below the get model function, and we're going to add a brand new function called create instance, which is going to have one parameter called pet info. Now inside of here, we're going to create a brand new variable called pet, which is of the pet instance type and equal to a brand new table. Now inside of this table, we're going to set all of the properties of the pet instance. So we're going to say UUID equals, and now if the pet info variable has a UUID property, we're going to set the UUID to that. Otherwise, if it doesn't, then we're just going to set it to a blank string. Now for the name property, we're going to do the same thing. Pet info argument has a name property, then we'll set it to that. Otherwise, we're just going to set it to dog by default. Now for the model, we're going to check if there is a model property of the argument passed to this, and if there's not, then we're going to say the model is whatever the pet name is. For the rarity, we'll set it to the rarity that's included or the common rarity by default. For the pet level, we'll go with the pet level or 0, and we'll do the same thing for experience as well. Now for equipped, we are going to set that to false by default if equipped is not a property of whatever's passed to this. We can also do the exact same thing for locked as well. Then for shiny, we'll of course say petinfo.shiny or false. And then we can do this for the other two upgrades as well. So golden and rainbow. And then let's update these properties right here, just like that. And then the last property that we need to add here is enchantment, which of course is going to be equal to petinfo.enchantment or just a blank table. And now that we've created that table / pet instance, what we're going to finally do is return the pet variable, which is the pet instance. Now you might be wondering, why are you creating this function? Well, there's a lot of functions inside of this config module alone that requires a pet instance, but realistically, it doesn't need all of the information from the pet instance. So some of these, like say the get model function, just really needs to know the model of the pet as well as the possible upgrades that it may have. It doesn't care about the UUID or most of the other properties. It just cares about a select view. And now when we're trying to generate stuff in the GUI and other things like that, for let's just say these two pets right here, we're not going to be working with a direct pet instance because a pet instance is usually what's stored inside of a player's inventory. So you've probably seen in our past episodes where we've basically created a fake pet instance and then fed that into some function. Rather than doing that, we can simply just use this function, pass whatever information we actually have about the pet, and then we can get a pet instance back and then use that in whatever function that we need to use it in. So now we're pretty much done with the pets config, and what we'll do next is add these new pets to our shop config. But before we do that, we actually have to create the developer products for these two pets that the player can purchase. So we're going to go to the home tab, click on game settings, go to monetization, scroll down to developer products, and we're going to create two brand new developer products. I'm just going to create two blank ones, click on save, then we can go to game settings, back to the monetization, and now we can actually edit these. So I'm going to rename our first developer product to exclusive pet number 1. You of course could rename this to the specific pet name if that's what you wanted it to do. And I'm going to set the price of this to $999. Then what we'll do is go back and then we'll update the second developer product. So we can update the name of this to be called exclusive pet number 2. And then for the price of this, we're going to go with $9,999. Now that we've done that, what we're going to want to do is copy the ID of both of these and then save these somewhere. I recommend saving them in the specific order so you don't forget which one is which. And then you can go ahead and click on save. Now that we've created our two developer products, let's go ahead and add these brand new pets to our shop config. So we're going to go ahead and open up the shop config. And inside of the shop config, we have the products variable right here. And what we're going to do is add a brand new table to this. So instead of clicks being the only category, we're going to go ahead and add a pets category, which is going to be equal to a blank table. Now, similar to clicks, this table is going to be an array. So to add our first product to here, we're going to create a brand new table inside of here. This table is going to start off with the ID property. And for the ID, we're going to use the ID of our first developer product. For the second property of this, it's going to be called name, which is going to be the actual name of the pet. So the first pet that we're going to be creating is the spider pet. Now for this first pet, I want them to be shiny, golden, and rainbow. So that's why we're going to set all these properties equal to true. And then for the last property that we're going to add here, it's going to be the rarity property. And we're going to set the rarity equal to epic. So now we've added our first pet to here. We can then easily add another one by just copying and pasting this. So now I'm going to update the ID property with the new ID. I'm going to update the name property with new name, which is going to be wolf. This pet is not going to be rainbow, but it will be shiny and golden. And for the rarity of this, we're just going to go with a rare rarity. Okay, now we've added our two pet products to here. So that's actually all good to go. The next thing we want to do is actually add another property to this module. So we're going to say shop dot, and this property is going to be called pets expired. And this is going to be set to a number. What this number is going to actually be set to is a Unix timestamp. Now you should at least be a little bit familiar with Unix timestamps because we have covered them in the past. Basically, the way that you handle time, calculating time, or doing things like that in Roblox or most programming languages is by using Unix timestamps. The Unix timestamp is a way to track time as a running total of seconds. The count first started in 1970, and then of course from there, every single second after that has been tracked and made into a Unix timestamp. So currently I'm recording this on the 21st of July. Let's say that I wanted to have these exclusive pets in the shop for a week. What I'm going to do is update this day to say the 28th. And then for the hour and minutes and seconds, we're just going to set everything to 0. And then we can click the convert button. Now that generates our Unix timestamp, and this is what the Unix timestamp will look like when it turns July 28th. It also gives us the relative time, and relative kind of means the plain way of saying this, so we would say that this would be in 7 days. Now, of course, I'll leave a link down below in the description to this website, unixtimestamp.com. It's a really useful website, and it makes working with these timestamps super simple and super easy to understand. So now what I'm going to do is grab my Unix timestamp. I'm going to copy that. And like I said, for the pets expire property, we're going to set that equal to the Unix timestamp that we just created. Cool. And now that we've added that here, we're actually done with the shop's config. So now what we can actually start doing is scripting the shop GUI. So we're going to go inside of the starter player, inside of the starter player scripts, inside the GUI folder, open up the shop folder, and open up the shop local script. Now, towards the top of our script, we're going to want to require a couple of different modules. So along with the format number module, we actually also want to get the format time module. So let's create a variable for that. Along with format time, we want to get the viewport model module as well. We then have the shops config, and we also want to get pets config as well. So pets config. Then going down to our clicks frame variable, we are going to go ahead and create a variable for our pets frame. So pets and pets. We'll then also create a variable for the pet pets container. So pets frame dot container, and we'll call this variable pets container. Then what we're going to do is right above our update click packages function is create a brand new function called generate pet packages. Now inside of this function, we're going to loop through all of the pet packages inside of that array that we just added to the products table inside of our shops config. So for underscore comma pet info in shop config dot products dot pets do. Now similar to how we did down below in the generate click packages function, we are going to create a product info variable. So we can literally just copy and paste that right here. This time though, instead of saying package.id, we're going to say petinfo.id. We'll then create a variable for the price, which is going to be equal to product info dot price in Robux. We'll then create a variable called clone, which is going to be equal to the pets container dot template, and then we'll clone that. We'll then make sure that we parent this to the pets container. We also want to make sure that we set it to be visible, and then we'll also rename this, which realistically isn't necessary, but I find it's always good to rename it, so we'll rename it to the pet info ID. After that, let's go ahead and create a variable called pet instance, and remember that function that we created earlier in the pets config? Well, we're going to use that now. So pets config dot create instance, and then we'll pass through the pet info variable. We'll then create a variable called model, which is also inside of the pets config module, so pets config dot get model, and we'll pass through the pet instance that we just created. Now that we have the model, we can go ahead and use the viewport model module to generate the viewport frame. Inside of the clone, we have the pet frame, and inside of the pet frame, we have the viewport frame. We'll then pass through the model that we want to generate through there. And then for the orientation, we're going to say cframe.angles, 0, math.rad, -90, and then 0. Cool. Now we've generated the viewport frame. Let's go ahead and create a variable called clicks, which is going to be equal to format number dot format compact. And then inside of here, we also have to use pets config dot get pet clicks, and then we're going to pass through the pet instance. Now that we've gotten the amount of clicks, we can go ahead and update that label. So inside of the pet frame, we have the clicks text label, and we're going to set the text to that. Now rather than just setting it equal to the clicks variable that we just created, I'm going to add an X here because that's also what they do in Clicking Simulator. And then to the right of the X is where we're going to display the amount of clicks. Now you don't have to include the X, of course, if you don't want to, but that's what they did, so that's what I'm doing. And now that we've updated that text label, we also have to update the rarity text label as well. So clone.pet.rarity.text equals pet instance.rarity. Then we have the buy button. So we're going to say clone.buy.price.text equals, and then what we'll do is use the format number.format on the price variable that we created earlier. And after we get that number, we're going to display the R and then a money sign symbol to indicate that that's the Robux currency. And now that we've updated the buy button, we also have to listen for it to be clicked on. So we're going to say clone.buy.mouse button one click, connect that to an anonymous function. And what do we want to do when this is clicked? Well, we want to use the marketplace service. We want to call the prompt product purchase method, and then we want to pass to the player as well as the pet info.id, which would be the actual ID of the developer product. Okay, cool. So that's actually all that we had to do for generating all the pet packages. Now that we've created this function, what we're going to do is go down towards the bottom of our script, and after we call the generate clicks packages function is where we'll call the generate pet packages function. Now we're going to create one more function inside of here, and this is going to be called update pet time, and that's not going to have any parameters. Now inside of here, we're going to create a while loop, and we're going to say while the mode equals pets and the GUI is enabled, then we're going to go ahead and go through with this loop. Now, of course, whenever we create a while loop, we also want to make sure that we include a task.wait. So we'll say task.wait1 right there, and then we'll create a variable called time until expire. That's going to be equal to the shop config.pets expire, and we're going to subtract whatever that number is by the os.time, which os.time will give us the current Unix timestamp. So we're subtracting the current time from the future time and seeing how much time is left until those pets expire. Now, if the time until expire is greater than 0, then we know that these pets are still on sale and players can purchase them. So we're going to go inside of the pets frame, and we're going to update the text of the subtitle to display that new time. So the string here is going to say goes off sale forever in, and then this is where we're going to display the time. So we're going to say format time, that convert to hours, minutes, and seconds, and then we're going to pass through the time until expire. Then we can make an else statement inside of here, and once again, we're going to update the subtitle text. So pets frame.subtitle.text equals, and now if the time has actually expired, then we're going to display no pets for sale currently. And that's all that we actually have to do with this function, and then let's go ahead and call it. So where are we going to call it? Well, we're actually going to call it inside of our set mode function, which we also have to update a little bit. So right here where we make the clicks frame visible, we also have to implement the pets frame. So we're going to say pets frame.visible equals mode equals pets. And then in addition to that, we want to check if the mode is equal to pets. And if the mode is equal to pets, then what we're going to do is use task.spawn, and then we're going to call that update time function. Now you might be wondering why we're using task.spawn right here. The reason that we're using task.spawn is because we're calling a while loop right here. If we did not use task.spawn and we simply just called this function, any code after the while loop starts will not run until the while loop has completely finished. In most scenarios, you're probably not going to want the script to stall. Instead, you'll probably want to execute all the code, even the code after it. So that's why we're going to use task.spawn here. Now, another thing that we have to take into account is whenever we open a GUI. If we were to swap to the pets mode, then this whole thing would work correctly. But imagine if we were to open the GUI, swap to the pets mode, and then close the GUI. After we close the GUI, what happens if we reopen the GUI? Well, when we reopen the GUI, the subtitle will no longer be updated with the timer. And the reason for that is because we're only calling update pet time anytime the set mode function is called. And the while loop will break whenever the GUI is no longer enabled, as it should of course, but now we actually have to account for that. Now the easiest way to account for this in my opinion is to remove this if statement right here, which is if the mode equals mode, then we're not going to do anything. So we're going to remove that. And the reason that we're removing that is because we're going to go down to the display GUI function. And in this else statement right here, what we're going to do is say task.delay. We're going to wait 0 seconds. We're going to create an anonymous function inside of here, and we're going to call the set mode function. And we're just going to call it with the same mode that is already selected. So going through a scenario again, the player opens up the GUI, changes to the pet mode, and then closes the GUI and reopens it. This time when they reopen it, the mode will be set to pet once again because it already is in the pet mode. And since the mode is being set to pet once again, the update pet time function will be called again, the while loop will run, and the time will be updated. Cool. And with that being said, we are pretty much done with scripting this, at least on the client side. Now let's go to the server side and finish this off. So going over to the server script service, we'll open up the shop script. Inside of here, we already have the shop config. In addition to the shop config, we also want to get the pets config as well. So let's go ahead and create a variable for that, the pets config. And then along with the player data manager, we also want to get the pets manager as well. So we'll create a variable called pets manager, just like that. Then we can go ahead and create a brand new function, but I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste the reward clicks function. We'll rename this to reward pet. Now this function will still accept the player, but it will no longer accept the profile. So we can go ahead and remove that. Then inside of this function, we're going to delete most of it. Well, at least 2 lines from it. So we'll still keep the index, but after that, we'll create a variable called product info, which is going to be equal to the shop config .products.pets. And then we're going to index that with the specific index. We'll then create a variable called pet, which is going to be equal to the product info.name. We'll then create a variable for its rarity, so product info.rarity. And then we'll also get the pet's current upgrade as well. So we'll use the pets config.get current upgrade, and then we'll pass through the product info. We'll then create an instance for this pet. So we're going to say local instance equals pets, and this time we'll actually use the pets manager to create the instance, not the pets config. So we're going to say pets manager.create pet. We'll pass through the pet, we'll pass through the rarity, and we'll also pass through the upgrade as well. Now that we've gotten the pet instance, let's go ahead and reward the player this pet. So we're going to say local pet given equals pets manager.give pet. We'll pass through the player, and we'll pass through the pet instance as well. Now you might be thinking, why are we calling the give pet function, but we're also setting that equal to a variable? Well, if we look at the give pet function, we can actually see that this function returns multiple different strings. And that's actually perfect here, because what if we do run into an issue when trying to deliver the pet to the player? Well, if we run into an issue while trying to deliver the pet, because let's say for instance they cannot hold more pets or something like that, then we could almost accidentally scam the player because we completely forgot that their inventory could be full or other things like that. So rather than scamming the player, what we're going to do is we're going to return if the pet given variable equals pet given exclamation mark, which remember is this string right here. This is the string that'll be returned to us if the pet is actually given to the player. So if that string is returned to us, then we're going to return this enum purchase granted right there. Otherwise, what we're going to do is return not processed yet. Cool. And that's all that we have to do for creating this function. Next, what we're going to do is go down to the purchase product function. And inside of here where we check if the product type equals clicks, we're going to add an else if statement here. And we'll say if the product type equals pets, then what we're going to do is return reward pet. We'll pass through the player and we'll pass through the product ID as well. Cool. And that's literally all that we had to do on both the client and the server. It was super simple and easy to implement this, and especially because a lot of the systems that are using this have already been created. So we only had to add a couple of brand new things to this. Anyways, we can go ahead and test this out. But before we test this out, what we're going to do is update the GUI. So we're going to go inside of the star GUI, inside of the shop GUI, inside of the pets frame, inside of the container frame, and then we have the template frame right here. Let's go ahead and make that no longer visible. And then let's also set the enable property of the shop GUI to no longer be enabled. And then we can go ahead, start up our game, and test this out. So hopping directly into our game, we're going to go ahead and open up the shop GUI. Inside of here, we can see that the clicks is displayed to us as it usually is. Let's go ahead and click on the pets button. And now when we click on the pets button, we can actually see exclusive pets tradable. We can see that these are around for 158 more hours, 5 minutes, and 4 seconds and counting. Now, of course, if you want to convert this from hours to days, you certainly can. You just have to update the format time module. It really wouldn't take too much work. But then if we look at how our pets are displayed, we can see how many clicks both of them give off. We can also see what rarity they are. We can see if the spider is a rainbow, whereas the wolf is a golden. We can see how much both of them cost. And then we can go ahead. Oh, and of course, I made a mistake, which is such a simple little mistake, but going back to the shop local script, we want to go to line 67, and of course, we don't want to pass through the player's variable. We want to pass through the player variable. So again, let's go ahead and test out purchasing these. So let's go ahead and buy the exclusive pet number 2, and then we'll also buy the spider pet as well. Now, if you're seeing these errors inside of your output, it actually isn't that big of a deal. It's just because of how our pet index is actually set up. You might also have seen this error when it came to using the bank as well, but like I said, you can ignore it. It doesn't affect you at all. If you wanted to fix this, what I would do is say if not egg, big, then return end. And that would prevent these errors from being displayed. But at the same time, you can ignore them. If you want to fix / hide those errors, then that's how you do it. Anyway, let's make sure that we have those pets. And now we can see that those pets are actually in our inventory. So let's go ahead and equip both of them. And when we equip both of them, we can see that they are following us and everything is looking and working perfectly. So I'm quite happy with how these exclusive pets turned out. And let me know what you guys think about these. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, with that being said, that's going to be it for this episode. If you guys did enjoy the video, make sure you smash the like button. If you want to support me and gain access to all the scripts and the game file that we made during this episode, there's a link down below the description to the Patreon, and you guys go and check that out. With that being said, I'll see you guys in the next episode.